In 2024, while millions of us enjoy everyday freedoms, we rarely think twice about, one North Korean woman was told her body existed for the pleasure of a leader she had never met. What she witnessed inside a state-run examination room shattered everything she had been taught since childhood. Today, for the first time, you will hear her story of reclaiming the most basic human right, ownership of her own life. If these stories matter to you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us bring these untold stories to light. Join us in standing up for human rights. The purpose of the Joy Group is to please the body and mind of comrade leader Kim Jong-un. A female teacher in North Korea was selected as a candidate for the Joy Group. Although she was taught that it was an honorable position to serve the supreme leader, what she saw when the door to the examination room at Namsan Hospital opened was a shock in itself. From that day on, she decided to risk her life to escape North Korea. What happened in that examination room, and what was the true nature of the Joy Group? Now I will tell you that story. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I was born and raised in Chongjin, North Hamgyong Province. I was 25 years old, and a teacher who taught mathematics at a middle school. Every morning at 6 o'clock, I would wake up, greet my parents, and head to school. When the cold wind from the Sea of Chongjin blew across my cheeks, I was used to it. It was the smell of my hometown. Our house wasn't very spacious. My father worked at a factory, and my mother ran a small business at the market. The market is like a traditional market that you know. Since the rations had been cut off for a long time, everyone had to get food at the market. It was a daily routine to calculate how much a bushel of rice cost, how much a sack of corn cost, and live accordingly. In school, portraits of President Kim Il-sung, General Kim Jong-il, and Marshal Kim Jong-un were hung in every classroom. Before the start of class, we always sang the loyalty song, and once a week, we had a time called Life Review where we criticized each other. I thought that was normal. I had lived that way since I was born. My dream was simple: to become a good teacher, teach children well, serve my parents well, and someday meet a good person, get married, and live a normal life. That was all. I had never even thought about leaving North Korea. But that spring, everything began to change. One day, while sitting in the teacher's office, the principal entered with a tense face. Two party officials followed behind. Their neatly dressed people's clothes looked somehow different from usual. Everyone stood up and greeted, and I quickly stood up too. Comrades, there is very honorable news today. The principal's voice trembled. There is a comrade from our school who has been recommended as a candidate for the Joy Group. Joy Group. I was taught that it was an honorable position to serve the supreme leader, also called the Pleasure Group. The party official began reading the list. My heart pounded. Could it be me? No, it can't be. But really, my name was called. Comrade Park Misun. At that moment, it felt like everything stopped. I felt the envious gazes of the teachers around me, and I got up from my seat with a dazed feeling. Although it was called an honor, why? I felt a heavy sinking feeling in my chest. An inexplicable sense of anxiety welled up, as if something was wrong. That evening, when I told my parents the news, I saw my mother's face turn pale. My father said nothing, but he clenched his fist and bit his lips. At that time, I didn't know why my parents were like that. Without knowing what the Joy Group was, I was just feeling a vague sense of fear. A week later, I received a notice to go to Namsan Hospital. I was told I had to undergo a physical examination for the Joy Group selection. That morning, my mother held my hand tightly and teared up. Misun, I'm sorry, Mom. I couldn't understand what she meant, but I felt something ominous from her trembling hand. The corridor of Namsan Hospital was filled with cold air. The cheap smell of disinfectant stung my nose, and under the dim light, the long corridor seemed to stretch endlessly. My fellow teacher, Jong-un, who was selected with me, was also there. Jong-un was 2 years younger than me, but that day, her face was pale. Sister Misun, I'm scared. Jong-un grabbed my hand. Cold sweat poured from her palm. I was also anxious, but I tried to reassure Jong-un. It's okay, Jong-un. We just have to get examined, right? But I was wrong. When the door to the examination room opened, I doubted my own eyes. I saw a doctor in a white gown, a soldier standing next to him, and a cold metal bed. The doctor looked at us with a blank face, and the soldier scanned us with a sharp gaze. "Take off your clothes." The doctor's voice was as cold as ice. For a moment, I doubted my ears. Take off my clothes? Here? I looked at the doctor in confusion. But he made no expression. I started trembling next to me. Hurry up. Why are you hesitating? This is for the general, the soldier shouted. For the general. I was confused by those words. I had learned to be loyal, and that I should do anything for the general, but this. This felt like something was wrong. With trembling hands, I took off my clothes. The cold air brushed against my bare skin, and goosebumps ran all over my body. I felt the gaze of the doctor and soldiers scanning my body. I felt like I had become an object, not a person. Shame and humiliation enveloped my entire body. I heard a snickering laugh from behind. This one has fair skin. She'll be perfect for the joy group. The vile voices of the soldiers hit my ears. I closed my eyes tightly. Tears flowed, but I held back. Is this an honor? Is this serving the general? When the examination was over, and I put my clothes back on, my hands were shaking so much that I couldn't button them properly. When I came out into the corridor, I saw Jong-un running madly in front of me. Under Jong-un's skirt, there were clear signs of self-harm on her thighs. Several lines of red wounds. At that moment, it felt like a lightning bolt struck my head. I remembered what Jong-un had whispered to me a few days ago. Sister, the joy group. It's hell. You must never go. I didn't understand at the time. But now, seeing those self-harm marks, I think I understand. On the way home, my legs felt weak, and I couldn't walk properly. My mind was in chaos, and my chest felt tight. It felt like everything I had believed in my whole life was crumbling. It wasn't a fleeting glory. It was a terrifying place that treated humans like objects. That day, I realized for the first time that this country was wrong. That night, I told my parents everything. The humiliating examination at Namsan Hospital. The soldiers' vile laughter, and even Jong's self-harm scars. My throat tightened and tears wouldn't stop as I spoke. Mother held my hand tightly and sobbed. "Miss-un, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." Father punched the wall. With a thud, a crack appeared on the wall. "What on earth is this country doing?" Father's angry voice echoed in the small room. Then it happened. The door opened roughly, and someone stumbled in. It was Jong. Her whole body was covered in dirt. Her clothes were torn in places, and blood was flowing from her arm. The pungent smell of blood filled the room. "Sister. Miss-un's sister." Jong knelt in front of me. She trembled all over and grabbed my clothes. "Sister, you must never go. To Oga. Oga is hell." Jong began to pour out her story in a trembling voice. Jong said she was selected for Oga when she was 20. At first, she thought it was an honor. But it wasn't a place to serve Marshal Kim Jong-un. She was called to the party. Officials drinking parties to pour alcohol, sing songs, and Jong couldn't continue and burst into tears. They didn't see us as people, just as toys. They threatened that if we refused, our families would be taken to political prison camps. I couldn't bear it, so I cut my wrists. I thought that was the only way to escape. As I listened to Jong, I couldn't even breathe. My whole body felt frozen. All the loyalty I had learned my whole life. The sacrifice for the general, it was all a lie. They were just exploiting and using young women. If you get selected, you'll suffer the same. Like me. Jong held my hand tightly. "Please run away. We have to get out of here." That night, our family talked all night. Father looked out the window and spoke. A factory colleague once sent his daughter to Oga, and she came back after a year. Her eyes were completely dead. She committed suicide soon after. Father's voice trembled. Mother told a story she heard at the market. None of the kids who went to Oga came back properly. They all went crazy, or else. Mother couldn't continue. I finally realized, this wasn't just a problem for me alone. The whole country was rotten. While outwardly shouting loyalty and patriotism, behind the scenes, they treated young women like beasts. At dawn, Father quietly said, "Miss-un, let's get out of here. We're going to defect." Defect. The moment I heard those words, my heart sank. Defecting meant preparing for death. If caught, it was execution, political prison camp, or even public execution. But staying here was also death. A life where, even if physically alive, human dignity was completely trampled. I nodded. Father, I want to do that too. I can't live here anymore. From that day on, our family's life changed completely. The day after we decided to defect, our house changed completely. Father started disposing of household items. One by one from dawn till late at night. The brass bowls passed down for generations, the silk quilt mother brought when she got married. Even the books I cherished since I was a child. Everything turned into money. Every time mother sold something at the market, she cried. I used this bowl to make soup for Missun's dolyanchi. Mother's hands trembled every time she put down a bowl. But we had no choice. The cost of defection was much higher than expected. Finding a broker was even more dangerous. Father secretly met trustworthy people every night. If caught by a state security agent, it would be the end. One night, when father came home, his face was pale. The state security was in our village today. They're looking for defector families. At those words, our family couldn't even breathe properly. A week later, father finally met a broker and came back. He handed me a small note and said, "It's 3,000 yuan per person in Chinese money. For the three of us, it's 9,000 yuan. In our money." Father sighed. It was an amount that would deplete all our family's assets. But we couldn't give up. Mother secretly took off her gold ring. And father sold his overdue factory wages for goods. I sold all my clothes and shoes. Bit by bit, we gathered enough money in 2 months. The defection date was set. June 15, 2024. That day was also my birthday. Celebrating my 26th birthday in North Korea. And leaving this land on my 26th birthday. The night before we left, I met Young. Young also wanted to go, but her family couldn't afford it. We sat side by side on the beach in Chongjin, listening to the sound of the waves. Sister, please survive and enjoy freedom. I'll stay here and pray. Tears streamed down Young's eyes. I cried too. I had to leave my hometown, friends, and this sea where I grew up together. Young, I'm sorry. I want to take you too. No, sister. You have to live. We'll meet again in South Korea later. That night, when I returned home, I packed only the essentials in a small backpack. A few undergarments, socks, and some corn cakes mother wrapped for me. That was all. They said heavy luggage would be a hindrance when crossing the river. At 2 a.m., we quietly left the house. Mother looked around the house and muttered, "Goodbye, then. The house where I lived for 30 years. Father wrapped his arm around mother's shoulder and closed the door. With a clang, our past was shut. Walking through the darkness, I looked back. I saw the faint lights of the city of Chongjin. Beyond that were the students I taught. Young I, and the memories of my childhood. But I couldn't go back now. I had to keep moving forward. To live as a human. The steps toward the Tumen River were heavy. But within that weight was also hope. At 3 in the morning, we arrived at a forest near the Tumen River. It was the place the broker had told us about beforehand. In the pitch-black darkness, the sound of the river flowing through the trees could be heard. I felt my whole body freeze at that sound. "Wait here. We need to confirm the time the patrol passes by." The broker's voice was low and cold. We hid behind the bushes, holding our breath. Father held mother's hand tightly, and I tried to calm my trembling body. About 10 minutes passed. I heard some noise from afar. It was the patrol. With the sound of boots, flashlights swept through the forest. I lay flat on the ground, not even breathing. My heart was beating so loudly, I was afraid they would hear it. "Nothing here. Let's go." The patrol's voice grew distant. The broker gestured. "Now." Quickly, we jumped up and ran toward the river. Standing by the river, even in the darkness, I could see the water flowing. White foam rose on the water, flowing like black silk. The sound of the water hit my ears. A cold wind blew, sending chills down my spine. "Take off your clothes and hold them above your head. If you get wet, you'll freeze to death once you get to China." Following the broker's instructions, we took off our clothes and made them into small bundles. Though it was June, the early morning air was as cold as a knife. The moment I dipped my foot into the river, I almost screamed. The ice-cold water wrapped around my ankles. It felt like my blood was rushing backward. "Mom, are you okay?" I asked. Mother clenched her teeth and nodded. Father went into the river first. I'll go first and check the path, then follow me. Father's voice trembled, but I could feel he was trying to reassure us. The water grew deeper. Knees, waist, and then chest. The cold water tightened around my body. It was hard to breathe, and the rocks underfoot were slippery, making me almost fall. The current was stronger than I thought. My body kept trying to drift away. Am I sown? Hold Mom's hand. Mother screamed like a cry for help. Just as Mother was about to be swept away by the current, I quickly grabbed her hand. Mom, don't let go of my hand. We clung to each other and desperately crossed the river. My feet were numb from the cold. My whole body shook, and my lips turned blue. But I couldn't stop. I had to survive. Forward, keep moving forward. When I finally felt solid ground under my feet, I realized I had made it. It was Chinese soil. We crawled up the riverbank and collapsed. Our whole bodies trembled, and we were out of breath. We did it. We made it, Father muttered. Mother lay face down on the ground, sobbing. I cried too. We had made it. We were alive. But the joy was short-lived, as the broker urged us on. We can't stay here long. The Chinese security police patrol this area. We need to move quickly. We put our clothes back on our wet bodies and stood up. Walking through the forest with trembling legs, I looked back. In the darkness, the Tumen River was still flowing. Beyond that river was my hometown, and young I. I said goodbye in my heart. Goodbye, Chongjin. Goodbye, my hometown. May we meet again someday in a free land. And so we took our first step into a new world. As soon as we set foot on Chinese soil, we got into the old van the broker had prepared. Inside the van, other defectors were huddled, besides us. Everyone was shivering in wet clothes like me. The van drove through the darkness with no headlights on. About an hour passed. The van stopped in front of a shabby house in a small village. Hide here for about a week. We need to avoid the security police. Following the broker's words, we went inside the house. The musty smell of mold stung my nose. But I was grateful just to have a roof over my head. An ethnic Korean grandmother lived in that house. The grandmother teared up as soon as she saw us. Oh dear, here you are again. People of our bloodline. The grandmother gave us warm water and dry clothes. Change quickly and warm up. You look like mice that have fallen into the water. When I ate the corn porridge the grandmother had made, I cried. It was the first warm meal I had had in days. Grandma, thank you. Thank you so much. The grandmother patted my back and said, we have to help each other. We're all Korean people. But I couldn't relax. The Chinese security police regularly patrolled the village to identify defectors. If caught, we would be immediately sent back to North Korea. Then we would either go to a political prison camp or face public execution. One afternoon, a security police car entered the village. The grandmother quickly hid us inside a wardrobe. Don't even breathe. We held our breath inside the cramped wardrobe. We could hear the security police's voices outside. Have you seen any defectors recently? No. There are no such people in our village. The grandmother's voice didn't tremble. But I was so scared that my whole body shook. Mother held my hand tightly. Fortunately, the security police just left. But after that incident, we knew we could no longer stay here. When the broker came back, Father asked, what do we need to do to get to South Korea? You need to go to a country with a South Korean embassy. Usually, you go through Laos or Thailand. But you'll need more money. Upon hearing the broker's words, my father sighed. We had very little money left. Then, my grandmother stepped forward. Let me help you a bit. I'll talk to the pastor of our church. My grandmother connected us with a Korean missionary. The missionary welcomed us with a warm smile. Don't worry. God will protect you. At the missionary's words, my mother shed tears. The missionary helped us with the cost of going to Laos, and also told us about a safe route. The month we spent in China was a daily battle with anxiety. At night, we couldn't sleep properly for fear of the police coming. And during the day, we hid inside the house to avoid being noticed by the Chinese. When we went out, we couldn't open our mouths, because we didn't know how to speak Chinese. One night, the broker came. We'll leave at dawn tomorrow. We'll take a bus to Laos. It was finally the start of our next journey. The day before we left, my grandmother packed us some kimbap. If you get hungry on the road, eat this. You must go to Korea and live well. I hugged my grandmother tightly. Grandma, I'll never forget you. Thank you so much. The next morning at dawn, we left again into the darkness. China was a second hell for us. But at the same time, it was a place where we met the benefactors of our lives. Without those warm hearts, we wouldn't have made it this far. The journey from China to Laos was arduous. The bus raced along the unpaved road, and the dust coming through the window made it hard to breathe. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I don't even remember how many days we spent on the bus. Crouched in the narrow seat, it felt like my buttocks were going to be worn out. Every time we crossed the border, it felt like my heart would stop. Every time we passed a checkpoint, I couldn't even breathe properly for fear that my identity would be exposed. Holding the fake ID that the broker had prepared, I prayed. Please, please let me get through safely. When we arrived in Laos, we went to a refugee camp. The camp, surrounded by barbed wire, felt like another prison. But this place was different from North Korea. We didn't have to starve, and we could sleep at night. There were many people like us who had come from North Korea in the camp. Everyone was waiting to go to South Korea. They say you're really free in South Korea. You can eat whatever you want and do whatever you want. One aunt said. I couldn't believe those words. But at the same time, I desperately wanted them to be true. A month later, we moved to Thailand. At the refugee camp in Thailand, we met officials from the National Intelligence Service. The investigation began. What did you do in North Korea? Why did you defect? Is there a party official in your family? The questions went on endlessly. I answered honestly. The story of the 5th selection, the humiliation at Namsan Hospital, and even Young I's testimony. I cried the whole time I was talking. The NIS official nodded and listened to my story. It must have been very hard for you. You'll be able to go to South Korea soon. The moment I heard those words, my heart swelled. I really could go to South Korea. I could gain freedom, but there was one last trial left. My father suddenly collapsed in the camp. His body, exhausted from the long journey, had reached its limit. He was quickly taken to the infirmary, and the doctor said, "Overwork and malnutrition. You need to rest more." I stayed by my father's side. "Dad, hang in there. Just hold on a little longer and we'll be in South Korea. There are good hospitals and lots of medicine there." My mother also held my father's hand and cried, "Honey, we've come this far. You can't give up." Fortunately, a week later, my father recovered a little. The doctor allowed him to take the plane. Finally, really finally, we could go to South Korea. On October 11, 2024, we boarded a plane bound for Incheon. It was the first time in my life that I had boarded such a large plane. As soon as I sat down in my seat, a flight attendant asked with a warm smile, "Would you like a drink?" I almost cried at that kind smile. This is what a free country looks like. People can work with smiles like this. The plane took off. I could see the land of Thailand getting further and further away through the window. We flew above the clouds. The blue sky, the white clouds, and the sea below. Everything was like a dream. Am I Son? Are we really going to South Korea? My mother asked, holding my hand tightly. Yes, Mom, we really are. We're free now. I hugged my mother tightly. During the 4-hour flight, I only looked out the window. Soon, South Korea would be in sight. The land of freedom, the land of hope. The flight attendant's announcement came on. We will soon be arriving at Incheon International Airport. At those words, I felt like my heart would burst. Finally, a new life was beginning. With the thud of the plane's wheels touching the ground, our long journey came to an end. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at Incheon International Airport. The moment the announcement came on, the tears I had been holding back burst out. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks to the tip of my chin. My mother and father also shed tears. We made it. We're alive. My father's trembling voice rang in my ear. The plane door opened, and we slowly walked down the stairs. The moment I first stepped on South Korean soil, my knees buckled and I almost fell. Is this really happening? Am I really stepping on the land of freedom? At the airport, NIS officials welcomed us. You've been through a lot. You're safe now. Welcome to the Republic of Korea. At those words, my mother burst into tears on the spot. I couldn't hold back either. My whole body shook with the overwhelming emotion. and relief that burst from my chest. We got into a car and headed for Hanawon. Hanawon is an educational institution where defectors learn how to live in South Korea. The sight of Seoul outside the window was a shock in itself. The tall buildings, the glittering neon signs, the constant flow of cars. It was bright like daytime even though it was night. They must keep the lights on like this at night here. The staff member smiled at my muttering. Yes, you don't have to worry because electricity is abundant here. On the first day at Hanawon, I cried again when I ate at the cafeteria. There was white rice, warm soup, and 5 side dishes. Kimchi, rolled omelette, grilled fish, seasoned spinach, and radish kimchi. Is it okay to eat all of this? I asked. The staff member answered with a surprised look. Of course. If you want more, you can get more. The education continued for 3 months. I learned how to use a cell phone, how to take the subway, how to do banking, and how to live in South Korean society. At first, everything was awkward. Even passing through the subway gate, buying things at a convenience store, and even pressing the elevator button felt strange. When I saw North Korean human rights materials during the education, I was shocked. The reality of the 5th Division was described in more detail. I confirmed once again how terrible the place I was selected from was and that Jong-un's words were not a lie. I thought of Jong-un while looking at those materials. Jong-un, where are you now and what are you doing? Are you still alive? 3 months later, our family received a rental apartment on the outskirts of Seoul. It was an apartment with 2 rooms. When I opened the door and entered, I was amazed to see the clean floor, the spacious living room, and the toilet with a toilet seat and sink. Wow, our house has a flush toilet. My mother was amazed. We also received settlement support money. My father and mother were registered as basic livelihood recipients and could receive living expenses. And they also received hospital support. My father received a free health checkup. And he shed tears when the doctor said, "Welcome. Now you just need to take care of your health." I wanted to become a teacher again in South Korea. A senior North Korean defector I met at Hanawon said, "My son, you need to get your teaching certificate again. But if you work hard, you can do it. I am currently studying for the GED exam. It is my dream to teach children again in South Korea someday." A year has passed, and I sometimes look out the window. The night sky in Seoul is not good for stargazing because of the lights. But I am still happy. Because I can breathe freely, say what I want to say, and dream. But on the other hand, I think of the people left behind in North Korea. How is Jong-un doing? My students, will they be able to enjoy freedom someday too? I pray every night for reunification to come as soon as possible, so that our fellow North Koreans can also enjoy this freedom, so that I can go back to my hometown of Chongjin and look at the sea freely. Until that day comes, I will live hard here in South Korea. I will not waste this freedom and opportunity I have received. And someday, when North Korea changes, I want to be even a small part of that change. Freedom was not free. There were many tears, pain, and sacrifices. But it was worth it. Everyone, if you are enjoying freedom, don't forget its value. And remember our fellow North Koreans who have not yet enjoyed freedom. I live with hope today as well, dreaming of a better tomorrow and a reunified homeland.